When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop popping pockets, swolla, 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 swolla.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, February 15th, 2021. Off-season is here. We are in full swing. We got all the news for you here. I am your host, Ethan Haristadoulou of the Greeks Gridiron. Going into today, I was not nervous, but just kind of like thinking to myself, man, things are really starting to slow down. There's not a whole lot to talk about. And boy, did I stumble on some gems this past weekend. And am I going to have a lot to talk to you guys about going into the next few weeks? Before we get into what that big surprise for me was, we're just going to start things off with kind of just a weekend roundup, break down some of the things that have been happening this past weekend. So first things first, as we always do here on the Greeks Gridiron, we're going to start with a question of the day. Today's question, kind of going off the big headline news of this past weekend, J.J. Watt, defensive end, 3-time defensive player of the year. I believe he is a 6-time All-Pro, maybe 5-time All-Pro. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but the man is the definitive definition of what it means to be a top-tier D-end in the NFL. With that, my question for you all, with J.J. Watt leaving the Houston Texans now, where do you think he is going to go, and where do you think he's going to fit? First off, I'll start this by saying that I kind of expected this to happen. There was a lot of drama going on this season with J.J. Watt and the Houston Texans, with calling out Bill O'Brien and the coaching staff, calling out players. He seemed very frustrated. J.J. Watt is somebody who expects nothing but the absolute best from his teammates. So, seeing his frustrations start to really boil over after 10 years in Houston, seeing what the team was a year ago when they were up 24-0 over the Kansas City Chiefs, and then having an absolute meltdown and then falling to the 5-11 team that they were this year. This is not where I believe that J.J. Watt thought the Houston Texans were going. They were on a massive upwards trajectory, and now here they are just toiling at the bottom of the league and only looking like they're getting worse and worse as the days go by. So where do you think J.J. Watt's going to go? What teams do you think he fits on best? For me personally, I don't necessarily have a great idea on where I think he's going to go. I do have a strong feeling he wants to play with his brothers out in Houston. In Pittsburgh. So it does seem like he wants to go maybe that direction, play with his brothers, both Derek and TJ Watt, fullback and linebacker respectively, on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could see him going there. I could see him also going somewhere that's probably a playoff contender. He wants to win a ring at this point in his career. JJ Watt really can't do much else to make himself look even better. So at this point, what do you need left? He needs the hardware. He needs the ring. So I would love to see J.J. Watt maybe go somewhere like the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they're in a really good spot for at least another year. Maybe potentially somewhere like the Packers, where they could use some defensive help if they're able to. If he's thinking, all right, I've made the money in my life, I don't need the money anymore, now I want to win a ring, he could take pay cuts. I saw some people saying, maybe he could go to Tampa Bay. The only way that works is if they don't bring back someone like Shaquille Barrett, I would say. And it seems like they want to try to keep their core unit in Tampa. So I don't think that's super likely, but it is definitely something possible to look at. So Tampa Bay is a good place. The Packers are a good place. I could see him going to Pittsburgh. I saw some places saying the Cowboys, but the Cowboys have their own quarterbacking issues going on, and I just have a very strong feeling that that's not going to be where he wants to go. He wants somewhere that was in that playoff hunt. Like I mentioned when I announced it on the breaking news this past Saturday, or on Friday rather, I'm looking at this more of like he's going somewhere within those top 4 to 6 teams that were in the playoffs that, are probably going to be back there and be in the hunt. You don't want to go somewhere like, the Dallas Cowboys, where who knows where they're going to be. They can't even figure out their own quarterback situation. There's Dak Prescott might not even be in Dallas next year. Who knows what's happening with him? So I couldn't see something like that. But Green Bay is definitely a good place I could see him going to. Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh. And I mean, anywhere that just realistically, if he would be willing to take a pay cut, and that's a perennial playoff team within the last few years. I have the playoff sheet for like who was there last year. Maybe Baltimore. Tennessee desperately needs help. It would be kind of shocking to see him go to another team within the division, but Tennessee needs help on the defensive side of the football. They could get literally no pressure towards the end of the season. So that's another place. As a Colts fan, I would love to see J.J. Watt. I've seen what he can do. I would love to see him over in Indianapolis, but I doubt that's going to happen. I feel like they're too focused on getting a quarterback in and a few other pieces. The defense isn't really the side of the football that they need to focus on. Kansas City would obviously be a dream fit. I don't think that they have the money for that. If you went somewhere like LA with the amount of pressure that Rams that they were able to put on some teams, that would be insane. An underdog team I could see him going to, maybe the Chargers. If he's going to pick a team that wasn't in the playoffs, the Chargers look really good with Justin Herbert. If he was to maybe go somewhere and get even better, and they were to bring in some more pieces, and if this coaching staff that they just hired works out for them, the Chargers would be a phenomenal team for him to go to. I would love to see them. I'm a big fan of Justin Herbert, and if they could get a really good defense behind him and some offensive weapons, the Chargers could end up being really, really good because Justin Herbert showed a lot of promise last year. But that's pretty much it for the J.J. Watt Texans news. Jumping into the next thing that we'll talk about here, Trevor Lawrence just had his pro day this past Friday. He threw early. He just had shoulder surgery. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Shoulder surgery on his torn labrum this past weekend. I believe he had it yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, it was his non-throwing shoulder, so nothing crazy about that. They're looking at a 5 to 6 window for recovery time. All I have to say is damn. Trevor Lawrence looked like an absolute stud. And a lot of people are saying, what does this show? He wasn't in pads, he's just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. You need to look beyond that. This is to just really kind of show off the arm talent, show off the accuracy that he knows how to place the ball. Obviously, if you are a football fan, you know that no quarterback just sits there throwing the football openly to no one with no one blanket covering the receivers. But it's just a way for someone like Urban Meyer, who suggested that this pro day happen before he get the surgery himself. He's going to draft him. This is more probably for him to really get a good look at him up in person and just see how he was. People were concerned he's looking a little bit thinner, but he probably isn't able to work out with the torn labrum, obviously. So, he'll definitely put his weight back on. I believe his playing weight's roughly 230 pounds, give or take, somewhere in that ballpark. He was at 213, which made him look fairly thin. But again, he's not able to lift right now. It's the off season. I wouldn't worry too much about something like that. By the time the regular season rolls around, he should be able to throw the football within about 6 weeks post-surgery. He should be ready to go by the time training camp rolls around and hucking that football and in playing shape, ready to go. But I do have a highlight clip that I put together for you guys who want to check this out. My God, if you look at some of these throws here, Trevor Lawrence just looked absolutely insane. And this is brought to you by the NFL Network. I was able to get this from them. He just looks so good. The way he throws the football with velocity, with really tight spins, and he's very accurate. None of his throws were really off target. I believe only 2 passes were actually not completed. The timing that he has for his throws, the placement, I believe this is a long bomb right here. This one is huge. Oh, no. This is to the sideline. There's a couple of them towards the end where he just throws absolute bombs down the field. But you can just see the out routes. Look at that. That was a beautiful throw right there. And the receiver just didn't catch it, but beautiful throw altogether. His out routes are very accurate, which is awesome. He's able to throw to the sideline, but also give his receivers room to be able to run and scramble. The inside routes are also very good. His deep ball is very fast, very low. It's not a super overarched pass. He just looks so good. And the deep ball is what is really impressive with me. I want to see, it should be getting to the last couple of them after this throw, I believe. You can just see the accuracy right in the back of the end zone. Receiver gets the feet down right there. That's a touchdown catch. That's an NFL throw right there. If I'm not mistaken, this is a long bomb right here. Yeah, he hucks this one down the field. Just beautiful spin, and he's leading the receiver. It's not behind the receiver either. And then this is the last throw of the day. And my God, this one was nice. This was a phenomenal throw. Just, running back and forth, kind of like a broken down drill. And just, again, leading the receiver. Receiver makes a phenomenal catch. Trevor Lawrence is going to be good. I know some people have, their thoughts about, him, but Trevor Lawrence is the number 1 wide receiver, and he looks ready to go. I'm really excited to see what happens with Trevor Lawrence. I'm hoping that Jacksonville can build a team around him, because it would be very disappointing for someone as talented as he is to, end up getting wasted away just because Jacksonville couldn't build a team around him. He is NFL ready. He is pro ready. And I am excited to see what happens to him. Moving on, though, past Trevor Lawrence also announced, this is on Friday, so not necessarily the weekend, but it was between shows. Mike and Maurkice Pouncey, twin brothers, both offensive linemen in the NFL, this past Friday announced that they are retiring. Maurkice Pouncey had 11 seasons in the NFL, Mike only having 10. He's a year younger, or not a year younger, but he was behind him. They are twins. Big Ben was reportedly shocked, and he's going to definitely miss having his big man up in center for him. He has been the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Maurkice Pouncey, that is, for the last 11 years, so a big portion of Ben Roethlisberger's life, or not life, but pro career in the NFL, excuse me. So I believe Big Ben was also quoted as saying that he would love to play quarterback as long as Maurkice was blocking for him. And then suddenly Maurkice just kind of announced his retirement this past weekend. So a little bit of a shocking situation, I'm sure, for Big Ben. Hopefully that Steelers offensive line is going to be able to hold up. That is a big blow, in my opinion, for the team in the middle there. Villanova is also someone that's supposed to be on the free agent market. So who knows how that Pittsburgh offensive line that's been so good for so long is going to look moving forward into next season should they lose even more players. But beyond that, Chris Doyle, the guy who was hired last week as the director of sports and performance for Jacksonville, resigned after the immense pressure that was being put onto him. I didn't really cover this too much last week because I wasn't 100% sure of exactly what was the whole situation. I didn't want to, really talk about it until I got my facts together and everything and understood what was going on. But it sounds like, he was booted from Iowa for a lot of really poor, racist remarks, things like that. And the fact that he made it onto the Jaguars roster is beyond me, but he resigned due to the pressure. I mean, this is one of those things where Urban Meyer's going to have to learn, I understand, the NCAA, the college ranks, there's so many teams, so many coaches, so many things going on. Things might fly under the radar there, but this is the NFL. There's only 32 teams in the league. Jacksonville only has the Jacksonville Jaguars as their team in the market. So, something like this was gonna get dug up, get brought up, and be brought out. I mean, you're on a grand stage now in the NFL, so there's no under the radar hirings of people with shady past, and I think Urban Meyer's probably gonna have to learn that lesson with this. But he has gone, and I think it's for the better. It was somebody who was let go for the reasons he was. I don't really think, at least in this moment in time, he should be getting any jobs in the NFL. And that's about as far as I want to go with that conversation. So he is gone from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Beyond that, and more player moving news in the NFL, it sounds like the Colts are really starting to heat up conversations with the Eagles about Carson Wentz. I was just listening earlier this morning on NFL Network. They talked about how the Colts have now offered 2 second-round draft picks, a third-round pick, and a fourth-round pick in exchange for Carson Wentz. The deal hasn't been made official yet, but it is something that is being talked about and worked on. So it's really starting to sound like Wentz to the Colts is going to be the play. Obviously, with Frank Reich there's the connection with that. Carson Wentz was having his MVP season when Frank Reich was in Philadelphia. So, I mean, it just seems more and more likely that we're going to be seeing Wentz to the Colts at some point soon. I think 2 second-round picks, a third and a fourth, is fair. I was said last week, I have a hard time really arguing against anything more than that, just because of the fact that, the Eagles went ahead and they benched Carson Wentz during the season. So at that point, you kind of almost devalue your quarterback. People are pointing to the Matthew Stafford trade, 3 first rounders and whatnot. But at the same time, Matthew Stafford's someone who has put up a 5,000 yard passing season. He has been as good as he has been for, the 10 years that he's been in the league, or I'm sorry, maybe is it 10 years now? I think it's 10 years now. He got drafted in 2009. And on top of that, he's never been benched. He's been a perennial starter. He's a great quarterback. He's in a market that nobody really looks at. But Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, and whether you think differently or not, feel free to comment this down below. But I look at Matthew Stafford as a far better quarterback than someone like Carson Wentz is. He's far more consistent. He's been around longer. He's been in the game. Wentz is having a lot of he's had a lot of trouble the last couple of years, whether it's emotionally with the team. So Wentz is kind of like a rebuilding project. I think 2 second rounders, a third and a fourth, is a fair pick, compensation package for Wentz, especially with the amount of money that the Colts are going to have to eat up taking him. So I think that's fair. And then in more Eagles news, they're also phoning offers for Zach Ertz. The Seahawks and Colts were the 2 teams that got brought up with that, which kind of surprises me because Zach Ertz is really sure-handed. He's a great tight end. He obviously not the best tight end in the league, but he's a very stable tight end in the league. And if you have someone like Jalen Hurts, who's young, he's up and coming, and if he's going to be your quarterback of the future, you want to have sure targets for him. So I'm kind of surprised to see that they're looking to move Zach Ertz. I would hope that, for Jalen Hurts' sake, he stays there in Philadelphia. But if he goes somewhere like the Seahawks or the Colts, both those teams do need a tight end. So, I mean, he could be a good fit for either one of those places and would really help out whoever the quarterback ends up being, because obviously there's this whole Russell Wilson rumor mill going on now, which in my opinion, I don't think he's going anywhere, at least this offseason. I think he'll be there for at least another year, but who knows in the NFL. A lot of craziness going on this past weekend, but that's pretty much everything for the weekend roundup, all the news, everything that I picked out that was most important. And then just to kind of recap, Trevor Lawrence looked awesome. The Chris Doyle thing, I'm glad that he, was just sent packing and got out of there. Excited to see where J.J. Watt goes. Hopefully it's going to be a contender. I would love to see J.J. Watt get a ring. If somebody deserves a ring, it is J.J. Watt, and that is for sure. Moving on to kind of go over what I was talking about earlier. Like I said, I was kind of, in the thought process of what am I going to be able to do as we go into this offseason and really start to slow down, because we have almost 3 weeks until the free agency starts to kick off for the NFL and big things really start to happen. As of right now, it's literally just, what's going to happen? Speculation, yada, yada, yada. And I was kind of thinking to myself, what am I going to be able to talk about in the interim? And, what can I do to bring you guys some more content to keep you coming back and wanting to watch more? Well, apparently within the last 5 years, this has been kind of being put together, and I had no idea about this, and I can't believe I didn't know and how it wasn't brought up sooner. Maybe I just missed the marketing for it. I don't know. But this past weekend was the debut of the Fan-Controlled Football League. The FCF is what they're calling themselves. The show is on Twitch, the games are aired on Twitch rather. And it boasts a league of 4 teams, what was supposed to be 8 teams, but I guess I'm assuming based off of the whole global situation kind of kept them from expanding to as many teams as they were hoping for. It is currently only 4 teams. You have the Wild Aces, the Glacier Boys, the Beasts, and the Zappers. It's going to be 7-on-7 football, so 3 offensive linemen. You have 2 skill positions in the quarterback. 3 skill positions in the quarterback. That would be 7. Math is hard. It's on a 50-yard field. The field is 35 yards wide. This is a very interesting take on football. So essentially, aside from the whole 7-on-7 shtick that you've seen in like arena football and other smaller leagues like that, fans are going to be drafting the teams every week. So there's only like 1 franchise player per team. A good example is Johnny Manziel is on one of the teams. He is on the Zappers. So he is he's like a franchise player. So he cannot be traded. He's stuck on that one team for the entirety of the season. If I'm not mistaken, the season's going to be 6 weeks long is what it looks like. So they have 1 franchise player. The rest of the players are drafted every single week from the fans. They have an app that you can go to on your phone. You can go on the website and you can actually go on the app. You get to pick a single team. You cannot switch teams. Once you pick that team, the idea is to kind of be like a no bandwagons fan type deal. So you can pick the team you support. You can help them draft their players every week. You can pick the plays that are being run in the game, even all the way down to who is going to be in the extra point battle, because they don't do any special teams in this league. You get the ball at the 10-yard line after a possession change, and then from there, the extra points are just a one-on-one matchup between the cornerback or defensive back, whatever you want to call them, and the wide receiver. So it's a very interesting take on what I've seen so far from arena football and things like that. I'm excited to see how it goes out. The whole fan control thing is really crazy because it gets pretty in-depth. It's not just like, you get on a team and your choice matters the most. There's like a whole IQ system where based off how correctly you vote on draft picks, on the plays being called, things like that, the success of your team, your fan IQ starts to go up and carries. And that way, if you're actually trying to help the team win and not just trying to, troll your way through and force a team to Hail Mary or something like that every play, which they have fail safes for anyways. But if you're trying to be a knowledgeable asset to the team, you get rewarded for it. And that kind of goes along with the whole no bandwagon thing, because the only way you can vote for other teams is if you create another account. You're not allowed to switch teams or anything like that. It's a pretty wild take on football. And you know what? It's a good time. And for somebody like me who just loves to see football being played, I'm going to be covering the NAL when the season kicks off later on in May. And this is something I will be talking about weekly now, since it's going to be live every Saturday on Twitch. I would love to be able to keep tabs on this and just see what's going on. The 2 games this past weekend, the Wild Aces in the debut game for the league went up against the Glacier Boys. The Wild Aces won 30-22, and then the Beasts took down the Zappers 48-44. Johnny Manziel being on the Zappers, he even said it himself, felt washed up. It's obviously clear that he has not played football in a very long time. But it was exciting to see Johnny Manziel in a uniform playing football. His first play, he almost scored a touchdown. And then after that, he went 1 for 5 with only a single completion. I think the completion was maybe 5 or 6 yards. It wasn't anything far. But it's a rather interesting take on football. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I like the whole fan voting aspect because this kind of takes like Madden and brings it into real life. If for those of you that don't know what Madden is, essentially it's the football's, NFL simulation of football. And it brings a really cool, it takes you beyond just the seat and it really brings you into the game. Cause if you're somebody who takes this serious, you can have some legitimate impact on things like that, play calling, players being picked, things like that. The one thing I can attribute this to or compare this to rather is how, you see the draft go on every single year and how annoyed some fans are with some teams picks because it seems like teams are just picking out of a hat rather than actually picking players that matter to the team. So I'm excited to see where this league goes. It's obviously not NFL type talent. These are people that either would like to be in the NFL or in Johnny Manziel's case, he's literally just doing this to network, it sounds like. And he was straight up front about that too. He's not trying to make some comeback into the NFL like some people were saying. I read into some articles afterwards, once after the fact, I guess people were saying, this is his way to try to get himself back in the NFL. But he was straight up no, this is me just trying to have a good time and play some football with some really cool people. The owners for the teams are pretty crazy. Richard Sherman owns one of them. Marshawn Lynch owns another one. And then they have co-owners for the teams as well. Austin Eckler is another co-owner of a team. It's celebrities, business people, and NFL players that all just have a bunch of money and bought these teams together and are kind of owning the team. I guess Marshawn Lynch, he's an owner. He's not supposed to play, almost got himself on the field. There's video of him suited up trying to get out there. And then they decided, no, not this week. We're not going to have you play. But this is one of those things where, if anything goes, anything goes. Marshawn Lynch is an owner and he almost just jumped onto the field to play football. That's pretty wild if you ask me. But again, I'm really excited to see where this goes. It's definitely a very interesting take on football. It's not NFL style football, obviously, but any football is fun football to watch, especially during the offseason when nothing's going on. It's unfortunate what happened to the American Alliance Football League and the XFL these past couple of years. So hopefully something like this that's a little bit more fun, more fan oriented can stick and kind of keep us rolling going through the offseason. And that's pretty much it for all the big breaking news from this past weekend. Like I said, we're in the off season. I don't want to start getting into free agent projections and stuff like that just yet. And there is a giant chart that I have right now to kind of talk about. This is the NFL's unrestricted free agency cheat sheet. This was put together by Mike Clay of ESPN, and he shared it on Twitter, and I saw it, and I thought it was an awesome sheet to go over for you guys to see. I'll pull it up right here real quick for you all, so you can kind of take a look at this. This is supposed to be every projected unrestricted free agent going into this offseason. A lot of names on this list. The list is massive. It might even be kind of hard for you guys to see just because there's so much on this list here. But it's a nice way to kind of just get a rough idea on what it's going to look like as far as changes being made with teams and players and things like that going through this offseason. Some of the big names that are on this list, if you just look at here, the quarterbacking list, you have Dak Prescott's on there, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. Those are some of the bigger quarterback names on there. Wide receiver list is deep. You have Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Smith-Schuster, Galladay's on there, Corey Davis, Curtis Samuel, Antonio Brown, Watkins, Hilton, AJ Green's on there, Nelson Aguilar, Larry Fitzgerald. The list just goes on and on and on. A lot of big names, people from the Super Bowl winning team, Levante David, Shaquille Barrett, both people that they're projected free agents, but like I said, they're not necessarily good. This is not the final list. That's the thing. This is a way too early NFL unrestricted free agency cheat sheet. I want to wait to start making projections, maybe a week out when some teams kind of sign their players before that time period, because this is a list here to look at, but at the same time, it's not necessarily going to be what the actual list of free agents is going to be on, I believe it's, March? Oh, when does free agency start? I want to say March 14th. That number keeps coming up in my head. I want to say it's March 14th, but obviously that's almost a month away. So you have a long time before you can even really break down where do you think these players are going to go. Dak Prescott's on this list. He might not even be on the free agency market come that time, because if the Cowboys are, being truthful about what they're saying, they're probably not just going to let him walk and let him go. They don't have anyone to kind of go behind Dak Prescott and take his place. I'd be legitimately shocked if they just let the guy go. So I just want to share that with you guys just so you can have a rough idea and kind of see who the big list of free agents are. You can kind of, if you want to screenshot this and keep it for yourself, you can always come back to this and refer to this little list here yourself. If you want to see kind of who you may or may not be seeing change teams going into this offseason, cool little thing to look at there. The last thing that I wanted to go over with you guys, and this is kind of just like a make or break it playoff prediction. So way too early make it or break it playoff predictions going into next season based off of kind of that free agent list and just where I think teams are going to go with the rumors of, player retirement, free agency changes, the holes that I see on these teams that, they were lucky enough to get in this year, but I don't think those holes will allow them to get in next year. I'm just going to run through the list of all the playoff teams, and then we'll kind of talk about whether I think they're going to make it or break it into next season. So as far as the AFC goes, we're going to just run the list here for the wild card round that hello, gravy. For this past playoff year, the Cleveland Browns, first team on the list. Do I think they'll make it or break it next season? This is a team that I think is going to make it again. They're in a really good position. They seem to be trending upward finally for the first time since 1999. It took them a long time to get it together, but with the way Baker Mayfield is playing, the way that offensive, that whole offense started to really click at the end. The defense played great. I mean, they were a few plays away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs in that divisional round. I mean, this is a team that I firmly see being back there in the AFC playoff race again. So 100%, I would stamp them with a make it. As for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is a team that, I'm going to say breaks their chance and doesn't make it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a lot going on. It doesn't sound like they're bringing back Juju Smith-Schuster. Maurkice Pouncey just retired. Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know if he really is going to have it after a whole nother season. He was talking about working out this past offseason and getting himself in the best shape of his life. He did not really look like he was in much better shape than in years past. The elbow wasn't bothering him. He was able to put up the big numbers you expect from Ben Roethlisberger. But 4 interceptions in that AFC wildcard game against the Browns. This is a team that I can see, especially when you're battling the Browns and Ravens for playoff spots. Like, you had 3 people coming out of the AFC North. Who knows if that's even going to be the case going into next year? And the AFC was tough this year. So do I see the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe, breaking their chance to not make it in? I'll stamp them with a break it. Indianapolis, if they get someone like Carson Wentz and they add a couple more pieces to the team, it doesn't seem like they're really going to be losing anyone. They don't have any massive free agents going into free agency. If I actually flip this over here, I think the only real big name that I saw on this list, T.Y. Hilton's on there, but they have the cap space to realistically bring back anyone that they need to. And everyone that I'm seeing on here that's Indianapolis related is not really a key player. And I'm saying that as I'm double checking. Anthony Walker, outside linebacker, is probably the one big piece that's there. And I don't even know if they're looking to bring him in. Xavier Rhodes is another one. He did really well for the Colts this year. But I have a strong feeling they'll be back in the playoffs. They're contending with a rebuilding Jaguars team. The Tennessee Titans are really the only team I look at as a real threat to them. They are the team that won the AFC South. So that's the only real team I see threatening them, and having that extra playoff spot gives them a really good opportunity. So I'm going to give the Colts a make it right there. The Buffalo Bills, I'm not even going to get into a conversation about this. The Buffalo Bills are great. They're a fantastic team. I believe a lot of their team is coming back next year. They can only continue to improve. Josh Allen looked phenomenal this season. I think what they need to do, though, is like I mentioned last week, I think it was, the Buffalo Bills need to work on their run game. They need to make their offense more balanced. They cannot just rely on Josh Allen hucking the football left and right every single play. They need to be able to run the football better and keep defenses more honest, whether they draft a running back, sign a running back, or if they work on the offensive line to maybe open up those lanes a little bit more for Devin Singletary. The running game needs to be worked on, but I 100% believe that the Buffalo Bills will be back. I'd be shocked if they wouldn't. Obviously, there's a possibility they don't make it, but I'd be shocked if they didn't. So I'll give them a make it. As for the Baltimore Ravens, this is a team that's kind of hit or miss. They kind of sputtered throughout the entire year. This was not the team that we saw last year. They were, the offensive show that they were. I'm very curious to see how this offense goes into next year. This is kind of a give or take. I'm going to say make it just because of the fact that there's the extra playoff spot. You have Lamar Jackson, who is an obvious threat. He's just a couple years removed from that MVP year. I still think he's a threat at quarterback. I think defenses maybe have started to figure out a little bit of the Ravens offense. And they're going to have to start relying a little bit more on Lamar Jackson being more of a passer than a runner. I think what he needs to, you need to pass first before run, and it's like he's like hit or miss with that. Sometimes he's pass first then run, and sometimes he's run first then pass. I think you need to lean a little bit more on the pass and have that threat of running be there, but you don't need to run as often as Lamar Jackson is. I think he needs to stay in the pocket a little bit more, make some of those bigger plays. You have some pretty good receivers out there. If they go and get a big receiver like someone like Allen Robinson, that would only help improve that passing game for them. I'm going to give the Baltimore Ravens this is like a sliver make it right there, like just barely. Tennessee Titans, this is a team that's hit or miss. If their defense only gets worse, they're in some big trouble. The defense towards the end of the year was not able to get any pressure on anyone. So, there's a possibility that they slip out, especially with how good some teams are potentially looking next year in the AFC. So I'm going to give them a make it for now. The Steelers are probably the only people out of this entire list that I feel on the AFC isn't going to make it, because the last one's the Kansas City Chiefs. And my God, would I be shocked if the Kansas City Chiefs didn't at least make it back to the playoffs next year. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to be back. They only lost 2 games last year when they were trying. And that was one in the Super Bowl and one against the Raiders back in like week 6. And that's the entire AFC. So I give pretty much everyone a make it being back there possibility. The only real question mark I have is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Tennessee Titans is like they're like a 51% make it, 49% break it. So they still pass, but I have a feeling that there's a strong possibility they could slip out as well. Going into the NFC, LA Rams are the first one up. I think that's a make it. I think them signing Matthew Stafford was a real sign that they're trying to win now and not later. They were willing to give up a lot of picks for him. This defense is phenomenal. They're the number one defense in the league in a lot of categories. This is a team that, they needed the offensive firepower at the quarterback position, and I think they got it with Matthew Stafford. They get to make it. The Seattle Seahawks, barring any crazy Russell Wilson trade, I would be shocked to see him go. So Russell Wilson's somebody that if he's still there and, they add to the offensive line like they need to, Russell Wilson cannot just be, they cannot just sit there and depend on him to scramble for his life and make these plays like they have been the last few years. They need to protect him. That way he wants to stay there and things go well for that team. I think with a better offensive line, the running game opens up even more than it already has. And on top of that, if Russell Wilson has more time in the pocket to make the throws, he's a great quarterback. He just needs the time. The offense can't just keep breaking down on him and expecting him to scramble and make a big play every single time he touches the football. I'm going to give them a make it. I have a strong feeling they'll be back. Next up is the I almost said the Buffalo Bears here. The Chicago Bears. I'm going to say break it. They are not going to make it back. I think it was a very slim chance that they got into the playoffs this year. And I have there's a lot going on over there with the offense. Who knows what their quarterbacking situation is going to look like next year. This is a team that just squeaked by at 8-8 getting into the playoffs. I kind of see them trending downward. I don't think that the Bears will be back next year. So I'm going to give them a break it. The New Orleans Saints, make it or break it. I'm going to actually go with a pretty big call here. I'm going to say break it. They're not going to make it in next season, breaking their chances to get back. The reason for that is they're losing Drew Brees. You don't necessarily know if Jameis Winston is coming back as their quarterback. It sounds like they want him in their future. Drew Brees was heard saying, this is your team now on the sideline to Jameis Winston during their playoff loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they are just so over the cap. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to move from that Saints team, either restructure or leave, and that's going to really hurt them. So I'm going to go with break it for the New Orleans Saints. I have a strong feeling that without Brees and some of those pieces, if they're going to have to let them go, it's not going to look well for the New Orleans Saints next year, especially competing against a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for that spot. I don't see it happening. And the Saints won the division. I don't believe that that's happening next year. I think that Tampa Bay is probably the front runner for winning the NFC South come next season. The Buccaneers, obviously Super Bowl champion. If they are able to bring back Shaq Barrett and Levante David and keep the majority of their core pieces in, keep Gronk in there because I feel like he's a big piece. Leonard Fournette's another big piece of that team that really came up during the playoffs. I think Ronald Jones is still a very serviceable back for them, whether they keep Fournette or not. I don't think that they're going to prioritize Fournette. You want to prioritize that defense and keep that defense together because that's what, in my opinion, really led to that championship. They were able to shut down a phenomenal Kansas City team. I'm going to give them a make it. Would be legitimately shocked if somehow Tampa Bay didn't find their way, even as a division winner, into the playoffs next season. I'm pegging them as the team to probably win the NFC South next year. Washington football team. It sounds like they may or may not be bringing back Alex Smith. They re-signed Taylor Heineke to a couple-year deal. if they're not bringing back Alex Smith, who was 5-1 for the team, I mean, he seemed to be a really good quarterback for that offense. I'd be kind of surprised. And if they don't bring him back, I don't really think Washington is going to make it to the playoffs, because without Alex Smith, I don't think Washington makes the playoffs this year. So I'm going to go with a break it for them. I don't see them running it back. They have a lot that they need to work on. They have a phenomenal defensive front, so they have a good argument for being back. But if that offense doesn't go, there's no chance. In a scoring league the way we are now, you can have a great defense, but you need to be able to score, and that's going to be a big issue for the Washington football team if they don't have somebody at quarterback. And Taylor Heineke had one great game against the Buccaneers. Does that carry over into next season? I mean, that's just a big question mark, and that's why I put them at break it. Last team being the Green Bay Packers. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers is going to be, he's working on a restructure with their contract. I think he wants some not even guarantees in money, but more just like guaranteed stability time length wise on his, like being with the Packers. He wants to stay with them. So if I was to pick anything, definitely a make it. They were the number 1 seed in the NFC this year. Big letdown for them not winning in the playoffs, going up against the Buccaneers into that NFC Championship game. I think Aaron Rodgers is hungry. He wants to be back. I think the Packers now realize that, okay, Aaron Rodgers has a significant amount of years left with him. Let's go out and get some more pieces for him, which, is funny because I should have been doing that the last 3 or 4 years, but, bygones be bygones, I guess. But I think that, with this draft coming up, they see the need for, another wide receiver. They need another playmaker on that offense to really open things up, for not to just rely on the whole Devontae Adams connection, because once you get that locked up, what is the offense at that point? Just a bunch of, you have Martez Valdez-Scantling, and you have the other guy over there. His name is slipping me right now. I cannot believe it. I can't even think of his name right now. I got to look this up. Wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers. This is going to really bug me. Who do we got? Wide receiver. Oh, Alan Lazard. Thank you. Alan Lazard. That's who I was looking at. I'm like, who is the other guy? It's Lazard with the weird name. I knew it was like an L or something like that. So Alan Lazard's the other one. I mean, granted, they both looked pretty good in the playoffs. You need another star outside of Devontae Adams, though. That offense needs someone like that. Also, they lost David Bakhtiari in the playoffs too, so that kind of shot them in the foot as well. I think one of the biggest things that we have learned from this past offseason is that without a premier, offensive lineman covering that left side, it kind of shoots you in the foot as a team. So, as long as they get all their offensive linemen back, if they pick up another threat in the skill position, and maybe they get a starter or two out of this year's draft or in free agency for the defense, the Packers are looking pretty good. They get to make it as well. So the only real teams that I'm looking at as far as, not being back next season for the playoffs, Pittsburgh Steelers out of the AFC. The Titans are kind of like, they're like 51 make it, 49% don't make it. So I'm very on the fence about that one. And then on top of that, the Ravens are another one where I'm kind of iffy, but I have a good feeling that they should be back. And then from the NFC, you have the Bears, the Saints, and the Washington football team, all really big question marks on whether they'll make it back or not. The Seahawks, Rams, the Buccaneers, the Packers all look like shoo-ins to be back there next year. And, with turnover in the playoffs, especially now that there's an extra playoff team, you could typically expect to see around 3, 4, 5 new teams every single year going into the playoffs. So those are probably the 4 that I would say would miss and not be back next year. And those are my make it or break it playoff predictions, my 2 early make it or break it playoff predictions. We'll probably do something like this after the draft and after free agency. We'll kind of circle back on this. I'll write down everyone that I picked out and see if I have any thoughts or changes on that. I'm very curious to see once we have everyone back in, or everyone's made their draft picks, everyone's signed, and free agents are picked up and everything like that, what the teams are really going to look like. It's hard to kind of do this when there's so many question marks on so many teams, especially this year as well, being with the weird salary cap issues they're going to have. It's looking like it's going to be projected around 180 million. The bottom floor that the NFLPA settled with the NFL is 175 million, but they're saying it looks like it's going to be around that 180 ballpark. So about 20 million or so less than what was the projected number for this year. So that's a very steep decline in what the numbers were supposed to be. But other than that, that's just about all the news that I have for you guys today. I appreciate everyone who took the time to join in and watch. Big question of the day again. I'll throw it back at you guys just to kind of recap the show. We talked about J.J. Watt at the beginning. Question of the day being, where do you think JJ Watt goes? Where do you think he fits as a team? So there's obviously different answers for that. I think he fits really well on a team like the Packers that needs a defensive end. A team like Pittsburgh, who could be short, could only use a little bit more on that defense to get even better on that side of the football. His brothers are over there as well. As for where I think he's going to go, the Pittsburgh Steelers is probably one of the more likelier places with his brothers there, but it's going to be a contender. Maybe somewhere like Tampa Bay if they don't re-sign Shaquille Barrett. They're going to want to keep that strong pass rush in. That was what made them successful on defense this year. But where do you guys think he's going to go? Where do you think he's going to fit? Would love to see your thoughts in the comment section down below. Other than that, my name's Ethan Hrissadulu. I appreciate you all for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll be back again Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time with more NFL and apparently now fan-controlled football league news as the week goes on. Again, we'll be covering that. That's every weekend on Saturdays now. It's on Twitch. I would love to see where this whole thing goes and love to see your guys' input on it. So check it out, see how it is. A very wild take on football. But again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all for watching. Have a good rest of your Monday.
When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a jump top in pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hrissadulu.
Swola, 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 swola. Swola, 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 swola.